What's up, everyone? Good evening. Good evening. Tonight is gonna be a crazy night. I got two guests. We're gonna blow y'all mind with some crazy shit. It's some heavy topics, so just advising y'all, we're not holding back on stuff we gonna say, okay? We will be talking about, as you can see, R. Kelly. We will be talking about child molestation, Hollywood, celebrities, culture, how all of those things intertwine. You do not want to miss this, so stay tuned, y'all. All right, so we've got two guests tonight. One of the guests, her name is Nick. She runs, she has a website called Nick's Village, which is fucking awesome. And I don't even know where to start with Nick. She has a Facebook, an Instagram, a YouTube, a podcast as well that you could check out. You can go to nicksvillage.com, which I will put the link in the comments. She also is located in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and she's located in the Midway Arts Building. Coatesville is located in Chester County, like maybe 40 minutes west of Philly, and she really does a lot of really spiritual work. She's a Reiki master, a teacher for tarot, a reader for tarot. She's been for 25 years. She does a lot of inner child work, spirituality work, and she also is a 501c3 through It Takes a Village in Chester County. She takes tax deductible donations, and you definitely want to check out her business. Her shop has all the right things you need if you're the kind of person that is like me and you see all the kind of things that I post. You'll definitely want to check out her shop. Let me put the link to her information in the comments, and this is what her page looks like, so you know what to look for. She's gonna give us perspective as well, and then we also have Mary No Justice, awesome individual who runs the Misfit Amish, and the website looks like this for those who are going to check that out. They are changing the world by educating one person at a time to bridge the cultural gap between Amish and Anabaptist societies and the English society. They have Patreon, the website, and you can find them here. I'm going to post this in the comments as well. Tonight is going to be pretty juicy, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. I have some stories myself and perspectives that I want to give, but I already know that y'all have some perspectives that y'all want to give as well. So I'm really excited for this, y'all. This is gonna be freaking phenomenal. All right, so so what I want to start off with really quick, I always like to jump into what I like to call a block drop, which is just a couple of headlines, and get y'all opinion on a couple of Jones real quick. So, and I do have some R. Kelly articles as well that I want to get into and get y'all opinions on too, so don't worry about that. Where is it? Crappy crap. Okay. George Floyd statue in Manhattan is vandalized by a skateboarder. A memorial in honor of late George Floyd was vandalized by a skateboarder in Manhattan. Authorities said doused the statue in silver paint over the weekend. Um, I mean, I don't understand how this is news, but things that we're getting ready to get into are not news. I've been talking about, and I don't know if y'all are aware of this, Barry Washington for days now, and the things that's going on with him. People aren't talking about it, but when it comes to news, like I've been finding some things are great, but it's stuff like that we already know. Um, and I'm pretty sure y'all don't really follow the news, right? Nick and Mary, like, what's y'all take on?
I I don't watch the news at all. I don't know anything about the news. Period.
And tell me why.
Because I don't trust the news. Um, when I was watching the news and then I was experiencing my world, they're they're so dramatically different.
Yes.
Um, and so I'd much rather get my news from what I experience in the world and what I need to be involved in, as opposed to what they're using to scare me or to make me believe a certain thing. You know, the
Right.
new everything on television is to manipulate us and to make us think in certain ways. Everything. It's programming us. That's why it's called program.
For real.
I don't watch most television.
What about you, Mary?
I don't actually watch the news because to me the news is just not my cup of tea. It's very depressing. It's very overwhelming to continually see all these stories of like making people feel like they're bad human beings when in fact there's so much good that happens in the world on a daily basis that we can completely miss it by being so focused on what's happening in the news.
For real. Oh my God, that was well put. Um, Yeah, no, I watch the news to monitor what they're saying and how they're saying it. And to compare what is actually going on in the world and how they like to portray things. Now, one source that I do really respect and revere and find very credible is Democracy Now, simply because they don't sugarcoat anything. Um, Honestly, I don't know how long they will last or how they lasted so long, but I
So
will say, go ahead.
I protested with Democracy Now!
Really?
In DC, over over the Hillary Clinton stuff. They they upset me because we ended up coming into an agreement with the police that they could arrest us and we'd pay $50 to get out. So it was just like a whole, you
Oh,
know,
I think I
it
remember you
wasn't.
talking about that.
Rosario Dawson was there with us. Yeah. So you said it, so I wanted to, yeah.
Oh yeah, but see, that brings up a good point. Like we still, no matter who it is, we still have to vet everything. And I think that what it comes down to is just trusting your gut and really trusting word of mouth at the end of the day. And your surroundings, just being open and aware of everything around you. But again, I like to touch on Block Drops headlines, just to kind of see what's going on, what people are saying, and give my 2 cents about shit. Uh, the whole, I don't know if y'all know about the Haitians that were at the border, migrants. Um, Cliff Notes, they have been fleeing unthinkable atrocities in Haiti,
Right.
trying to come here. And at one point last week, there were 14,000 people under the Del Rio Bridge. They cleared them out like nothing and sent them right on the plane back. And the small amount of people that they did keep, it's 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 alarming, it's staggering, but nothing that is not surprising considering the disparities and how disproportionately they hurt, kill, maim, destroy Black people and communities. It's no wonder that they're doing it to Haitians. But they're still talking about this as if like, oh my God, how could this happen? And giving a breakdown as to how it's happening. And to me, that's just kind of hilarious. All right. So what I want to start off with, if y'all two don't mind, is the whole reason that this podcast tonight started off was from a post that my really good friend posted on Facebook, speaking of his experience to molestation and being molested for years as a child and not being believed. Family didn't believe him. One friend believed him, but he just kind of he dealt with it. He worked through it, you know. And I guess from his perspective, to witness the the R. Kelly trial, unfold, and people, especially Black people, stand by him, revere him, say free Kelly, really sympathize with him, disgust him. And I can relate on so many levels. I will say that because I was molested at a young age and I didn't tell anyone until I was older. It wasn't that people didn't believe me. I didn't have that experience, but I can completely understand. And I remember when the sex tape with R. Kelly came out, and I remember hearing those girls were like 14 and he pissed on them and stuff. Like that really boggled my mind, right? And here we come to not R. Kelly, but the Cosby trial. And my judgment kind of got a little clouded because then you have all these women, and they're all white women, I believe. Mind you, I didn't really follow any of this stuff too closely because it was kind of disturbing to me. Um, Seeing so many Black men get charged with all this stuff and getting like so much media attention, but all these white men not getting it, really made me form a bit of a bias. But it's something that I stayed quiet on because there's so many other things that play a part in it. But with the issues that I had going back to like molestation and abuse, I just, for me personally, I don't understand how the victims, specifically with the R. Kelly trial, why there's not enough attention on the victims. Like, I feel like because it's R. Kelly, all people are talking about is R. Kelly, and like I'm pretty sure he's like, you know, flying off the charts right now with his music. I'm not sure, but so go ahead, somebody speak.
Well, so hi, this is Mary. So I myself am a survivor of child sexual assault, and this was inside of an Amish community, um, old order Amish. I lived in 5 different Amish communities. It started at a very, very young age, but it there were times that I wasn't believed, and even after the convictions of some of the people that had sexually assaulted me, there were still people. There were 4 busloads of Amish people who showed up in the courtroom to support my perpetrators of abuse. Like, it was legitimately, and it wasn't a thing of like there's no focus. There's this whole focus on it's a very male-based focus, and I feel like in a way
Yeah,
they're throwing the book at R. Kelly in a way because he's Black. What about all the white man that they don't do anything about because
right.
they give him a slap on the wrist because, oh my God, we can't like ruin his career, or we can't like ruin the rest of his life, or
Charlie
like,
Sheen,
yeah, yes,
for real.
like just for reals. And even in when I'm sitting here and I'm doing the work that I'm doing with the Misfit Amish, I hear stories repeatedly about how these Amish survivors they try to report it, and sometimes like the police department won't even do an investigation. Now that is slowly maybe changing a little bit for some places, but it does happen quite frequently where, there can be a lack of appropriate investigation, and where they may also not even just not like do anything legally. They may place it in the hands of the Amish church, which is not equipped. These people have an eighth grade education. They don't learn anything about science, you know, any healthcare, etc., no psychology. And so they're here and they're supposed to be rehabilitating convicted sex offenders, pedophiles.
What?
And it shows, because that doesn't just happen inside of Amish communities, it also
Yeah,
happens outside of there. It's like the state of Hollywood. Like, these people in positions of power inside of our cultures are literally being given leeway to do whatever it is that they do, rather than being held accountable to the law.
they're above
And
the law. Not that the law is any better.
yeah, there is that. But yes, no, that's why I often say this, is that they're not above the law. So until they start holding people accountable, nothing's going to change. And it doesn't matter. It should be across the board the same.
For real.
Like
I want to touch back on the Black communities in general, because why are we getting all of the attention? And like, yeah, I'm starting off with R. Kelly, but R. Kelly is the latest. And I really want to touch on the whole music aspect of things and Hollywood and the musicians, and the Black communities at large that support him and are still buying his music. First of all, I don't like R. Kelly as a person. I don't like him as a musician. I don't think, like, he has a great voice, but I feel like he screams. I can't stand his music. I've never liked his music. That's me personally. Me personally. So it's easy for me to stop listening to him compared to Chris Brown. I still fuck with his, like, I still can't stop grooving to his music, but I know that I shouldn't. So I can understand where some of these folk come from in a sense, but I still don't. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Nikki, what do you think?
So you've asked a lot of questions.
I know.
So it's kind of like, what do you want to know what I think about?
So when it comes to Black people's perspective on R. Kelly and like support for him, like, because like a lot of families don't, but like we go through molestation and rape and abuse, and our family members don't believe us. Those be the same ones that's sitting there condoning the behavior that he's sitting there and, oh, I still fuck with him, free Kelly, I'm gonna buy his records. Da, 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 da. That's my perspective, but like I want to know your perspective.
Well, for me, it's kind of R. Kelly's difficult for me, as is, Michael Jackson. Bill Cosby's not difficult for me. R. Kelly's difficult because we know that R. Kelly was molested. We know that R. Kelly had people around him that admit that he was mentally challenged or intelligently challenged.
That's true.
And
you're right.
And yet people around him were not even doing anything. Like the ex-wife admitted that she had a threesome with a teenager with him. Like, these people were not, so it's bigger than just R. Kelly. It's like, I, as an adult survivor, I look at, the boys and girls around me. My whole family was molested, like all the kids were. And I look and I'm like, when do they, it's like to hear somebody say, well, he molested me. It's like, well, when did he become responsible for that? When did he ever get help? When did anybody help him to know what was correct?
And that's a huge problem in our communities as well.
I'm not at all condoning anything that R. Kelly did. Like,
Right.
please don't take anything I'm saying as, oh, that was okay. I'm just saying, like, there's so much blame. I think about the parents. The parents, to me, fed their children to R. Kelly.
Hold on, let me cut you off real quick, because there's a point here. There's a really good point here. Why is it that everything you're saying is the argument they give for white celebrities, but we're not given that same fucking grace? Go ahead.
So to me, the parents fed their children to R. Kelly. I heard the one dad, he was like, he wanted his daughter to get backstage. He has security. Why do you want your daughter to go backstage? R. Kelly been doing this since Aaliyah.
True.
So,
but because
you already know.
Right. But because we were told that her parents gave permission, we acted like it wasn't what it was. But it was what it was from then. And it's like, it's so complex. Like, R. Kelly's so much more complex, because then the girls who, I know young girls, and I know that they think they're grown, and I know that once they have a man he's like doing this and that, I know that's where they want to be and what they're trying to do. So it's so complex. It's not just as simple as like, and he's challenged. He's not all there. Like, he's not thinking on the level of a grown man. Who's driving him to the school? He's got a chauffeur. They're driving him to the school and to the McDonald's or whatever it was near the school.
Right.
Are they accountable for that? And then they're letting the little girls in. Like, who's just him? Because for me, if I'm a chauffeur and somebody asks me to drive them to the high school so they could pick up young girls after school, I'm not doing it. Right. I lose my job that day.
Yeah.
And I call the police.
That. Yeah.
So here's a question that I have. At what point do people start actually teaching about, because this is also a problem in so many areas, but at what point do people actually start teaching people that have been or are survivors of abuse? When do they start teaching them that consent is required and that children cannot consent?
Because as we know, a lot of folks that are victims end up repeating the cycle or contributing to that. Some folks.
There's actually an article on my blog about recidivism that actually talks about that, repeating the cycle. But what do we do to prevent the repeating of the cycle? And
well, I think it starts when it comes to Black folk and even Amish folk, breaking those chains of generational trauma and really getting back to who we are and having that sense of community. First of all, listening to victims can play a big role, I think, or giving the culture of being able to feel comfortable to speak up anyway, because I was never not believed. I never felt comfortable to speak up to begin with.
Right, because when you live in an environment where it's such a taboo subject to even begin to have conversations, then at that point there's never any space for you to be able to even speak up safely.
Right.
So I think you're right. Like, I do agree that it has to start breaking generational trauma. I personally think it has to start with like education. I think it's very important to teach people about consent and about like the age of consent, and also about people in positions of trust. And so I feel like if the people around, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the people around R. Kelly, like if they knew that this was his background, and they knew that this is what he had experienced, and that this is where his mental level was, then they should have provided some form of education for him. And they failed him by not doing that.
Oh, well,
And they're
that's what we're going to
guilty.
get into in a second later on, is the whole Hollywood thing, because they're all pawns in this scheme. So stay tuned for that discussion too.
Okay.
I want to touch on Nick, you talked about MJ, and I want to go into that because like you said, MJ Kelly is difficult for you, but Cosby wasn't. Cosby's not difficult for me. MJ's not difficult for me. I really think that with I have a soft spot for MJ, but given everything that I've seen, I just don't feel. I feel like there's more that we're missing, and there's a lot that we'll never know. And that's I maybe that's just me, but I have a soft spot for MJ. And so like I still listen to him and support him. Maybe it's because he's not here to defend himself. Maybe I just feel like he was victimized his whole life, and I have a soft spot for him. But his whole life was served on a platter for us to dissect for years, and we can still go into the future dissecting his life. And there's still many things that we don't know. There's a lot of things that we will never know. But from my perspective and where I'm sitting, I can only see him as the victim. Whereas people like R. Kelly or Chris Brown or Cosby, I definitely feel like they're more they have to be penalized for the things that they've done. That's a no-brainer for me, especially Cosby. But I also, with that in the same breath, want everybody else that has been
I don't agree with you for
has
Cosby.
to be they have to be charged along with these motherfuckers, because don't just harp on the black ones and show the example for the black ones when let me give an example. All these cops that have shot and killed black folk and brown folk, right, have not been charged. But the one cop that has been charged for killing a civilian happens to be a black man, Muslim, by the way, was charged for killing a white woman. Of course, they made an example out of him, and he's serving life. Mohammed Noor, for anyone who wants to know, just research him. And that's what I feel like is happening with Hollywood and all of these black artists and entertainers. Like, they're being made as the example.
I don't agree with you about Cosby.
Go ahead, let me know.
I feel like, for one, I grew up. I was born in 1968. Okay. So I grew up in the 70s, and my whole life I lived the whole complete decade of the 70s.
Right.
And I believe that those women knew exactly who Bill Cosby was and what was going on. And I believe that they knew that he had the Quaaludes and whatever else he had.
I agree
and I
with you.
believe that they went and they consented because they were doing that. I believe that was the party. I believe that when he was trying to purchase like Time Warner or something,
I did hear about that, and there's documentation.
we always do too much.
Yep.
You know, if he'd have just stopped and been, good old
He wouldn't
Jello
have been on the
pudding eating Bill, he'd have been fine.
Yep.
But as soon as like he had the money to actually really be talking seriously about buying this news station, like TV,
right.
like what? Time Warner?
Now, hold on a second, because I will say, in every lie there is some truth, and there had to have been something for them to go off of for them to make this whole accusation.
What they went off of was that there was drug culture, and
right.
that he was the one bringing the drugs. That's what they went off of. Who brought the drugs? Bill.
Wow.
He would put them here. He would do that. Like, that's what they went off of. And they're white women. Oh my God.
And see, that's the thing that I have a difference with the Cosby situation and the Kelly situation, because when I look at the victims of Kelly, it's nothing but young black girls. And yes, I do understand that groupies will be groupies and parents don't care because they see the dollar signs. I still can't help but feel bad for these young, impressionable girls that are made to be sexed up from the time that they're in toddler uniforms. You know what I'm saying? So that, like, I can't help but feel bad, and can't help but feel bad for our culture and how devilish and indoctrinated many of us can be. And I feel like it's different with the Cosby thing. Like you're saying, that was a culture thing. It was a generational thing. And I do get where you're coming from. Like all of this shit is very complicated. But I think people like to simplify it and use these black folk as the example. I'm sorry, I keep cutting y'all off. I really want to hear what y'all have to say. It's for real.
Well, I mean, I can understand why you might feel that way. I also disagree with that. Like, the thing is, when you're talking about in every truth there's a lie, in every lie there's a truth, or something like that. However you said that. I think that there's also a tendency for some people to readily dismiss claims because of whatever the news has put out or whatever people have put out. I personally don't know enough to make an informed decision because I have not personally talked to any of the survivors from like any of those cases. But I also feel like it kind of goes back to, as having been somebody that's been in the public eye and being accused of lying, you might want to be careful what you say about you think people are lying. Because the thing is that you can even have, as somebody who has been accused of lying and being accused of being bitter, you can even have perpetrators that sit there and admit to like exactly what they did, and people will still accuse you of lying
You
and making
know,
stuff
it's
up.
it's okay to tell me to be careful to not call these people a liar, but this man is fighting for his life and he's saying he didn't do it. And it's okay to say that he did it.
Yeah.
I feel
So
like that's what makes it so complicated too. Go ahead. Somebody was gonna say something.
Mm.
I was done. I was just trying to understand why. And I'm an adult survivor, so I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm not, but I'm saying like that's okay. Like these women's voices have to overshadow his voice and has to overshadow what I believe, the research I've done and what I believe, because of what I believe goes on in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And exactly what you're talking about, the attack on Black people all the time.
Yep.
All the time, front and foremost, no matter what, it's a Black person all the time.
Mm-hmm.
See, and in the case of Amish people, like I'm telling you, they don't do anything to them, pretty much, for the most part.
For me, it's like I hear what you're saying, but like the Amish have the luxury of living outside of our culture.
That's true too.
Like they have like this whole world that they have that I don't have the luxury. We can't walk away and do that. They won't let us.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying, but I can also tell you that we have the luxury of walking away from this culture. No, we don't. There's no luxury of walking away from the culture that we came from. You can
I'm
take the
not talking
person,
about the culture you came from. I'm talking about the American culture.
the
The
American
Amish do.
culture.
The Amish do. I'm talking about what we have to do. You guys have a whole different set of laws and rules. There's a whole nother thing going on that you guys aren't assimilating to the culture that we have. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you're not American. I'm talking about the majority of the culture. You guys have this luxury of living outside of it. I'm not saying it doesn't come with
I don't
its own
Oh my
problems and
God.
issues, but
I
I'm
don't see it
saying
as a luxury though. I see it as like
I do.
both. What I hear from
Excuse
both
me?
y'all is what I
Excuse
hear
me?
from y'all. What I hear from y'all is two parts to a whole. Like I feel like y'all are saying the same thing, but from different perspectives. Because it's still both the same experience, but from what I hear is both mental prison from both ends. That's what I'm hearing. I don't feel like anyone has the luxury of going anywhere when it comes to the indoctrination of being an American. And even living in that bubble within America, I think that comes with its own challenges too. When you're
And I
when you're
acknowledge
mentally
that. And I acknowledge that. But when we're talking about, when you're asking questions about how society treats Blacks versus Amish, they're two separate things. Like they're not even, and I'm not saying they don't suffer abuse. It's just the same as Native Americans. Yes, they suffer
yes, I
abuse.
agree.
And yes, all this stuff is going on. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about it's a different thing.
Do
Native
you think
Americans living on the reservation is different from Black people walking the streets every day. Like, it's just different. And I'm not saying they don't come out and they're not, it's just different. That's all I'm saying.
it's a
There's
different
this
experience?
extra, if Black people had a place where they could just go off and it's not allowed, where can we go? We have to stay, you know what I'm saying?
Are you
Like,
seriously saying this, Nikki?
I'm
Do you,
absolutely
Nick?
saying this. I'm
Do you
100% saying
realize
this.
that? Let me tell you a little bit about like some of the Amish culture. First off, I feel like we need to completely dismantle your romanticized view of Amish culture at this
You
moment
don't understand what I'm
because you
saying if
don't
you're talking
understand what
about a
I'm saying.
romanticized view of Amish culture,
You are
because I
talking
do
about
not have a romanticized view. I'm saying it's separate. That's all I'm saying. It's different and it's separate. Black culture is not separate. That's all I'm
So
saying. That's why I
right.
brought
So
up
what I'm
Native
hearing,
American culture, because Native American culture is separate. I'm not saying that you guys don't come and get involved. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's
right.
separate.
So what
Black
I'm
You're
culture is
saying it.
not.
Excuse
Mary,
me,
what
may
I
I speak?
yeah, go ahead.
Um, I hear you saying it's separate. I also hear you saying some very inaccurate statements about Amish folks, which is absolutely a romanticized view that is
What did I
without
say
Well,
about
listen,
evidence
Amish
hold on,
folks
based.
listen.
besides it's
Let me say
separate?
this. Let me say this. If you feel that way, and I will say something else too, but if you feel that way, then it's not your part to educate us, but enlighten us if you would like to. And then I'll also say what I think was the real triggering word from my perspective for you, Mary, was the word luxury, because it completely changed a lot of things. And I get where you're coming from, Mary. Then I also get where Nick is coming from as well. Because of a lot of the things that we as Black folk have to go through, we do not have the luxury of being able to pay attention or understand other cultures as much as other cultures just dig into ours. We're dug apart, dissected, moved about however we wish. But then um when it comes to uh us being able to talk about we're not able to. And so I feel like it's the same thing when it comes to y'all. Like, it's just from a different experience and different perspectives, but it's still a mental oppression just in a different area of America. um and so I don't know much about Amish culture myself. And so like I have a hard time trying to understand it, but what I feel is that it's the same. A lot of the pain and the anguish when it comes to abuse and the things that you go through, I think is very similar to things that Black folk go through, just from a different lens. So I'd like to know more about why you feel that way, because I do understand where Nick is coming from a perspective of a Black man. I'm not saying that your perspective is luxury or any of that, but I do get what she's saying as far as like separate, and like you live in a different area of the world than we do, and from our perspective it seems like it's completely cut off. And from growing up, for me as a Black man, it did seem like I'm going to admit it did seem romanticized, and still until I started hearing different stories of the atrocities that y'all went through and still go through even till this present day. It still doesn't change the fact that like there's a lot of things I still don't know. But I am in no way diminishing the abuses or the atrocities that still go on. I don't think any of us are here. That's not the intention, but I would like for you to let me know more about like your experience if you feel comfortable.
I just feel like, one, I understand that I've never been Black, and I can never speak about like what your experiences are like. I can have empathy, I can have a space. I do understand that. What I don't understand is why I can't talk about and be heard a little bit about the whole um, when somebody's making incorrect statements about Amish culture, such as we have a luxury of going outside and we have the luxury of being separate from American society. Um, we that Have you ever seen The Handmaid's Tale?
No, and I actually wanted to do an episode about that and touch on that because I want to be educated on that. There was a listen, I did an episode last night just to give y'all a little perspective. The bans on our body thing that's been going on for the reactionary protest to the Texas abortion ban.
Yes.
It was a nationwide thing, and what I'm seeing is nothing but white women supporting it, and black women didn't support it in droves, and there's a deeper reason behind that. Locally, there was a situation where the white women who organized this event locally decided that they wanted to dress up in the uniforms that they wore in that show, and that's what prompted me to like, well, what's this about? And then black people and brown people were up, and black women and brown women were up in arms about it, and they decided to pull out in support of this protest. And so I wanted to know more about why, like, what the hell is Handmaid's Tale?
Okay, so The Handmaid's Tale is set in a dystopian society where all I can say is I watched every single episode. I'm at a space where it's not as triggering to me, but there is a content warning for sanctioned rape. Um, the brainwashing, the mind stuff, like the mind control that they did in the show itself, it's based on a book. I know that some people have watched it and been afraid that like it's going to happen in society today. And I'm telling you right now, that's happening. Some of that stuff is happening inside of Amish communities today. There's women being used as, they basically have these women who are handmaidens, and you kind of follow the main character around the handmaids, which is why it's called The Handmaid's Tale. Um, so they use these women as, they basically sanction raping these women until they become impregnated to give birth for people who are childless.
Oh.
They Women are second-class citizens, which is in my culture also appropriate. Women dress differently based on their stations in life, like what their assignment is. They're required to cover up, like, lest they be called whores and Jezebels and all this other stuff. It's really crazy. There's a lot of physical abuse. There's a lot of murders. Uh, just things that
See, what I was
here's
told,
the thing is, inside of Amish communities, there can be murders that happen and never get reported and never get investigated because basically people hold this perception that Amish people are above the law. The laws of America do not apply to them, and that's a lie.
see, what everything you're saying, you can apply to black folk, except they're below the law, like really below the law. You know what I mean? So, like, that's why I say, like, it's like two sides of a coin,
Yes.
except y'all are closed. Like, from our perception, y'all are closed off. So it makes us hard to feel like, and this happens to everyone in America. Every demographic is closed off from another, but it's more mental than anything else. So
Right.
we're not able to unite. That's the whole point. That's the whole point behind it. But this is from my perspective and judgment, from my experiences, what I've seen, and I'm not immersed in Amish culture, so I don't know. But it's comes to me like, well, they're separate. They're over there. They don't know that I can't, out of sight, out of mind. I can't see. I can't experience. But then what I'm getting is like the same thing from you. You know what I'm saying? Like, not you specifically, but anyone I've come in contact with that's Amish, like, but the thing is, we all are going through the same fucking shit in some form or fashion.
Right. And I think until we all unite and start fighting this together, that it's not going to create any kind of meaningful change.
Right. But
Uh,
I I think the whole point I'm trying to make is the word luxury. I think just sets you off. And I want to know why that word, if anything, would be triggering to you. Because there's words
it's
for us, for black folks, that can be triggering, that set us the fuck off too. Like for me, sometimes black on black crime used to set me off. That dog whistle used to, but now, like,
so
you know,
the luxury after like everything I have heard over and over and over again. Well, you have the privilege of you can leave if you want to. No, you don't. You do not have the privilege of leaving. That is a myth that is perpetuated by society, and you're buying the lies.
the
I am
difference though.
tired of it being viewed as, in our culture, you were taught from the ground up that it is a privilege and a luxury to be born into an Amish community.
Oh no,
And
I completely understand that. But the thing is, if you were to leave, right, and you set yourself free, you're literally can live on the top of the world because you're white. You know what I mean? Like we don't have that luxury to.
no,
We
we
can't paint our
don't.
skin.
No, we don't. I understand that you can't paint your skin a different color. I understand that. But no, we don't. When we leave, when I left, I didn't even exist on paper. I didn't have a social security number. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't even have a copy of my birth certificate. I did not exist.
Right.
So the resources that are needed to leave, sometimes like I don't know how to explain it. Like we have to go through like this whole like one um we get shunned, we lose everything that we have ever known. We don't know how to assimilate into the culture that we're thrown into. And it's too much for some people. There are people that commit suicide because of it. Because they would rather die than go back. Because what awaits them back there versus yeah.
Okay.
So I don't feel like we have the luxury. Like, do some people have the luxury of maintaining relationships with their families in the later years? Yes, some people now do. If they come from like a more liberal community, maybe, but a lot of us don't. We don't have that luxury.
So
We don't
I
have
get,
anybody.
but I do get what Nikki was saying, and if you take the luxury part out of the context, I think you would understand where she's coming from too. Like it's more like we all have those walls kept up, but honestly, like I hear y'all saying the same fucking shit. From my side of things, like I hear y'all saying the same shit. Um, it's just that for me as a black man, like growing up having the black experience, I don't know shit about Amish people except what I'm getting now from friends that I've come across and people that I love and care about, and understanding that it's y'all went through bullshit too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, but again, no one is here to disrespect nobody. Again, if you do feel disrespected or you do feel like you need to say something, feel free to say it because ain't nobody here to disrespect. We're here to share our opinions.
No.
And I like to keep a cool, like I got meditation music playing. That's how I like to do things. You know what I mean? Keep it G. But at the same time, when it comes to molestation and abuse and being in cultures that are continually motherfucking oppressed, there are gonna be experiences that always need to be heard and validated. And I, for one, I don't think anyone is here to discredit anyone's experience, but we are here to share our experiences. So that is the point. I do want to get back to the topic because I want to talk again about, and I want to get back to victimization, but I want to talk about Chris Brown.
Oh God.
Yeah, because I grew up like Nick. You talked about how you grew up with Cosby. Um, I grew up with Chris Brown, and did I really hate and just like have fury when he like Rihanna's the biggest person in the world to me, and that really hit me hard. So for a while, I didn't fuck with him. But then a time came when I was like, oh well, you know, domestic abuse. Like I haven't heard anything. He's fine, but I didn't do my research. I do know about Karuche and things that happen with that, but I didn't really like look into it. And so like Chris Brown is an interesting thing for me. I want to know y'all thoughts on that, because
when that happened, I had just got out of the community a couple years prior to that, and I was a big fan, and I was devastated. Literally devastated. I don't know how else to describe it. I'll never forget, like, when I saw the photos of Rihanna's face, and I just about, I can't describe what happened.
now see, like I said, Rihanna's my baby. So
Yeah.
like I was fucking devastated, but at the same time, we were talking about cycles repeating, and like I also feel like they were. Do you remember Whitney and Bobby? I feel like they were put together. I don't feel like it was a real relationship. So I kind of feel like they were put together to be the new age Bobby and Whitney. So I'm not saying that I did not take it seriously and I was not devastated, but at the same time, I was careful with how I took information in. Do you know what I mean? Because again, this is Hollywood culture, and it was also at the time where a lot of like Illuminati stuff was coming out, and things like that. And I really wanted to be careful, like how I took things in, what I was taking in. Again, I don't condone violence, and I don't condone what happened. And I'm not saying at all that I don't. Rihanna didn't do anything. Like I know Rihanna, but I do know that like she witnessed things happen to her parents, and Chris Brown witnessed happen to his parents. And I think that destiny was bound to perpetuate that. I feel like throwing two young black celebrities together, not that it was bound to happen necessarily, but it very well could have. I look at Casey and it was JoJo, right? And fucking Mary, in the 90s. And that was another thing. When it comes to domestic violence, my opinions waver, because I don't know why. Like with domestic violence, not to necessarily say, oh, people can change, but they can under the right situation, under the right circumstances, and with the right help. But when you're under the heightened scope of Hollywood and cameras, it's also very hard to escape that. And again, like Chris Brown was a youth. He came into this as a youth. Like I said, it's very complicated and layered for me. But but this is why I have a hard time with Chris Brown, specifically because I have a very close relationship. I grew up with him, but I also sympathize with him because of growing up with him and seeing like him grow into a person and knowing his backstory, knowing Rihanna's backstory to a T. Like, comments, thoughts. Nick, are you still there?
I'm here. I don't know anything about Chris Brown and Rihanna. I know that, I saw the pictures, of course, and whatever. But as I told you before I even came on the show, like I'm very controversial because I don't look at the world the way other people look at the world. I
Right.
don't speak about the world in the way people speak about the world. So if you don't listen to me, you're not going to understand what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to offend or hurt anyone. That's not even my MO.
Right.
And so I'm kind of like, I don't even know how to speak on these subjects because everything I'm going to say is going to be like, and I don't want to upset anyone. So it's like,
Well,
yes,
speak your mind and speak freely.
the way I feel about Chris Brown and Rihanna, growing up in a home with my mother being abused, um, growing into an adult who was in an abusive relationship, I believe that it's a dance. I have people that I love that are in abusive relationships, that have been in abusive relationships, and it's a dance. It's not so simple as, of course, he's got more strength, so he can, like, hurt her more than she can hurt him sometimes, because that's not always true. But it's a dance. And
Yeah.
so it's really hard to jump in and see some pictures and be like, oh, he's 100% wrong, when I
Right.
know that these situations are dances. It's not that simple. It's not that, I know women that I was with a woman. I'm not into violence and doing all that. And I was with a woman that made me punch her in the face. And I know it's like, what do you mean? I'm laying in bed and she kept getting in my face and I kept saying, get away from me. Please get away from me. She took my clothes and ran outside. And I went outside and punched her in her face. And it's like, she wanted that. She wouldn't have it any other way. I wasn't correct for hitting her. I should have learned how to handle my emotions better. But it was a dance. It wasn't just, oh, I just walked in the house and just punched her in the face.
Right.
Like, that's, so I don't know what happened with Chris Brown and Rihanna. I know that it's messed up, that it's, there's these pictures and now he's like this bad guy, when I'm pretty sure they were probably playing with this kind of violence for some time.
But again, that was 10 years ago. That was more than 10 years ago, wasn't it? It was like 09, I think.
That was a while ago.
Right. Mary, you sent me stuff on. You sent me. Well, you sent me like his following on Spotify, which doesn't surprise me. But you did say that he's done things since. Like, scoop me in on that.
So Chris Brown has actually had multiple charges brought against him. It wasn't just a one-time thing. And, the thing is when you talk about generational violence, domestic violence, when people grow up with it, they're bound to repeat it unless they find a way to break the cycle. He got that slap on the wrist for Rihanna. And then there was, a couple of years later, he had another incident. So there's like just multiple incidents that have happened since then, and he still has this huge following. Matter of fact, like I think the latest one was as of June 2021, when he was accused again, because apparently he had an argument and he's accused of hitting this woman again. Different woman, but yeah.
Different women doesn't change my idea that they're dancing. Everybody saw the pictures of Rihanna. It's kind of like R. Kelly. It's like everybody knew that R. Kelly was like sleeping with little girls, but yet dads were taking their daughters to the concert and handing them over to R. Kelly. It's like, yeah, they're different, but they're still being involved. And I'm not saying that they're not being hurt or anything like that, because as I was in a shelter, but it stopped when I was ready to stop. It didn't stop until then. I left, I went in the shelter, I did this, I did that, but I always went back.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just him. I always did things. It's more than just, and I'm not saying it doesn't get violent, it's not hurt. Yeah, but it's a dance. I could have picked up and left. And you can say, well, you didn't know and this and that. Of course I knew I could leave.
So you think that part of being beaten is partially your fault?
That's not what I said.
Well, hold on, let me
This,
cut you off there, because there's in looking at the universe and the way that I see things, what you allow is your fault. It's in your path and it's in your
see,
destiny.
this
You're
is
bound to learn
the
it.
problem with that is kind of like the word luxury that she had a problem with. Fault. What do you mean by fault? It's what you're involved in. Like, I try to stay away from these victim terms and these terms of like, oh, this
Right,
happened to me. It's what you're involved in. That's why I
right.
brought up, I said these other women, they knew who Chris Brown was. They know Chris Brown beats women. Obviously, that's what you're saying, that he beats women. So they knew that. And they chose to get involved with Chris Brown. Why? Because they didn't care. And then they get beat, and it's like, it's not a fault. It's what they're involved with. It's what they're trying to, what they're doing. It's a dance they're involved in. That's what I'm saying. Like, I really think you're having a hard time understanding my language, and I don't know how to help you, because I feel like you're not hearing what I'm saying from my heart. You're hearing these words that you don't really know what the hell I'm saying. And so I'm not saying fault, because I don't feel like it's fault. I feel like we get what we're into. We
Yeah,
The universe
So
continues to give me the cycle of what I want to be involved in. And
right.
sometimes that's
Until you break
sadness,
the cycle.
and sometimes that's depression, and sometimes that's pain, because I'm involved in that. And once
Sometimes
I
it's
make it
pain.
one time, and when I make that decision to step outside of that, I do something different, and the universe gives me something different. They give me what that is that I'm trying to be involved with. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Can you help me, Chantal?
And so clearly, Chris, and for what I'm seeing here, no, Mary. So what? There's a lot of things are divine destiny, whether we know it or not. There's a purpose for everything. um, and that's the way that I see the universe. There's a purpose for everything. It doesn't mean that what you go through is okay or it's right or it's good, but good or bad, everything is an experience. And with Chris Brown specifically, he clearly is not, there's lessons being thrown at him and he's not taking those lessons. So he's still repeating his history until history is going to show him that he can free himself from those chains if he chooses to. So
The
at
que-
this point, the things that he's going through in my eyes is that he's at now just as at fault because he's allowing those things to happen to him.
yeah, he's involved too. Absolutely, he's partying.
Oh yeah, and just the same with girls that but it's see with that it's a little deeper because it has to do with the trauma and ties that can make or break you as a person. We all deal with our trauma in multiple different ways. Everybody deals with their trauma in multiple different ways. And whether you have trauma, everyone actually has trauma in their childhood. And it manifests in a number of different ways and it makes us who we are. Whether it's bad or good, that's how you perceive it, but it still makes you the person that you are. And for example, you, Mary, as a person, you escaped a lot of that trauma and overcame it. And every day, all of us still deal with different demons and work through them on a daily basis. We're still waking up and breathing and fighting the things that we experienced as far as trauma in our past lives or in our childhood. That's the way that I specifically see the universe. Nick, is that kind of similar?
It's it's what you're involved in, yes. And it's like, so this question that Mary's asking about the children, I feel like these are like deeper questions, because then you get into why the children came and why we're here, and what, like
Well, we were going to get into spirituality and how it connects.
like I have all this childhood trauma, and I don't years ago I didn't understand why I had that trauma, but today I look at it and I'm like, well, I had that trauma because it's making me the person I am today, to be able to help people in the way that I'm able to help people. And if I didn't have these experiences, I wouldn't be able to do that. But God knew that there was a bigger picture than I understood. Um, but then that starts getting involved in like what I believe about who we are and why we're here and like all that kind of stuff. But and it's so complex. It's all so complex. It's not, these aren't like just easy answers. Like, like
I agree.
it's just not easy stuff to talk about. Like, especially when there's like a language barrier, and that's what I feel like we're dealing with, is a language barrier, because I talk in this way, and and it's difficult and it's different, and I think in this way, and it's difficult to translate, because you guys, I'm listening to you and I'm like, yeah, they're saying stuff like good and bad, and I don't really think experiences are good or bad. I think they just are. And
I agree.
it's like stuff like that. It's like, am I a good or bad person? I'm just a person. Like, I don't feel
Right.
like anybody's good or bad. Like, the truth is, all we are manifestations of the universe doing every
Correct.
single thing possible in every
We are
single way, like all at the same time. Like, that's really what's going on here. So everything that's happening is necessary.
right.
And it's like, who's good and bad in that? In something like that, there's no good and bad. It just is.
Right.
And so it's like, it's hard to sit and talk about like those kinds of concepts, because to me it's like it's all unfolding and happening exactly as it should. I don't think any of these people are bad. I don't think any of them are bad. I don't think Chris Brown is bad. I don't
Right.
think R. Kelly is bad. I don't think Michael Jackson is bad.
No, Mary. Are you familiar with like yin and yang and like duality?
The balance.
Right. That's very much how I see things. Um, in a sense of good and bad, but you can't have one without the other, and altogether it makes up an experience, it makes up life. You can't have one without the other. So whether someone wants to acknowledge it or not, there's bad that happens in their life, but it's still an experience that makes them who they are. Without it, they're not living, they're not a being. You know what I mean? Does one experience things in their childhood that are not savory? Yes, and it's not necessarily great, but it still is a piece of who they are. It's a facet, it's an experience that makes them who they are. Without it, you can't be who you are. Without that the experience that you had, the experiences that you have had as a person, Mary, you would not be the powerful person to speak out about the things that you're speaking out about today. The fears that you had and still have and still face every day, because I know you have traumas every day. I have traumas every fucking day that I'm facing, and I'm sure that Nick does as well. I think that the traumas that we all collectively face make us the pieces and shards of who we are, and it's beautiful. No matter what it is, good or bad that you perceive it, it's an experience, and it's all, to me, it's all good because it's all beautiful, and beautiful means not great, but great. It means ugly, but pretty. It means the good and the bad. That's what beautiful means to me. It's life in general. Um, and so like, yeah, I've went through a lot of bad fucking things in my life, but I still see it as very beautiful. And that's my particular take and experience on it. Um, and I think this is my personal opinion. I know that you were raised in Mary, specifically raised in a different world than what I was raised in. And I'm like, I was raised in a fucking Baptist background, first of all, Black Baptist background, which is different than a white Baptist background, might I add, because a lot of white people tend to not understand the difference. But the person that I've come to be and understand, all the things that I've experienced, I accept my role in it. Whether or not I was technically physically able to do something about it, even as a child, the things that happened to me, I accept my role in it. And for a lot of people that can be hard to understand, but when you do learn to wrap your head around it, in the sense of the role that you play in life, the role that you play as a cell, as a cell, a part of this bigger organism that we call Mother Earth, in the bigger universe in general. Um, it's very finite in the infinity, if that's a word, the infinite universe. Um, and that's my particular viewpoint on the world and looking outward. But even looking at someone as something as finite as one's childhood experiences with molestation, during that time as a child, it's very traumatizing, but good and bad is based off of what those that raise you teach you. That is good and bad. Um, and as you get older and the more that societal views reinforce good and bad without reinforcing the the things behind what duality is and what it embodies, you're missing a big piece of the puzzle. And I'm not blaming you, I'm not pointing fingers at you, but it's how I view the universe as a being, as a cell in this organism. That's how I personally view the universe. End of rant.
And that's fine, and y'all are entitled to those beliefs, and I don't exactly believe that, I'm not even gonna explain what I believe because I don't feel like it's the time or the place, but you guys are entitled to believe whatever it is that you wish to believe, and I will respect that. I will try my best to respect that. But thank you for explaining.
That's all I ask. Um, while we're on the topic, uh, I really want to get into victimization because that is another layered thing. And looking at it just from face value, the way that the media, and this, I'm going to throw in here from my experience because it has to do with race. Um, People of color are put in the media and portrayed as criminals, or um, sex workers in a bad light, and crazed people and all these other things long before they're ever portrayed as a victim, if ever. And that is my big issue with the R. Kelly thing, not even just the media circus around him. Do I think he needs to be convicted on some level and prosecuted and put behind bars? Yes. I also think he needs some kind of rehabilitation along with it, just because of all the trauma things that he's went through. I don't want him to do something to himself, but I also think that the conversation needs to be more on these people and celebrities and the things that they do in general, and why, and more focus on eradicating it. And that not even just from our own communities and our own having our own conversations with our own families, but even on a bigger scope as far as getting it the fuck out of our culture, like over sexualization, um, over victimization of white folk and white women and young teens and young men of young racist white men getting victimized, but lack of victimization for black people in general, brown people in general, LGBT in general. What say y'all?
I would agree with you. They need to make, I think that they need to start um, when they start actually changing things for people at the top, because we have been sitting here watching white males get away with all kinds of stuff for years and years and years. And even in some cases, like people glorifying that. I think that they need to start like holding accountable other like the white people that they are prosecuting, like versus, for example, they like to throw the book at black people, and they like to also do this thing where they over victimize white women. Case in point, let me give you a case that happened last year. So this young Amish woman was murdered by a non-Amish man. Her name was Linda Stoltzfus. Justice Smoker murdered her. They threw the ever-loving book at him because it was a white woman. Promise you. It was because it was a white woman, and it was a white Amish woman, and it was absolutely over-victimization. Because in that case, somebody from outside the community committed a crime against one of their people, and so now
Was
they have to throw the book at him.
was the guy a brown or black guy?
Um, let me go look that up, actually. I can't say for sure.
But either
Yeah.
way, I mean, we can go
Spanish.
to the present. We can
Yes.
go to the present with the Gabby Petito case. Oh, he was a
Yes.
brown or black guy.
Let me send
He's
you the
Hispanic.
link.
See, there you have it.
But that's part of what makes me so mad is like you know, like, here you go, and now you're going to throw the book at this guy, but other people do horrendous things just as bad and they get nothing. Like, what gives?
Right.
America is supposed to be about equality and justice and, you know, liberty for all. Like, but where's the equality and justice and liberty for all?
That doesn't exist. That's
Right.
I
that's
know,
a
right?
fantasy. That's like it's not true, and it's listening to like you know that they're not going to do away with any of this stuff because it's by plan.
Yeah.
Like this is why the white men are getting away with it. This is why Hollywood's been getting away with this forever. Like they know what's going on. They don't want to stop it. It's what they're trying to do. It's only a problem when somebody outside of who they sanction to do it does it. That's when it's a problem.
Yep. So that's and I think that the Linda Stoltzfus case, in my opinion, like literally exemplifies that. Same as like the Gabby case. That one is just
I'm sorry, but that Gabby fucking Petito case pisses me the fuck off. I don't give a, I'm sorry, but like, yeah, she deserves, you know, some love and attention from her family and some people, but not this whole national. And I'm sorry, but no, I'm not sorry. Fuck her. It infuriates me because there's so many black and indigenous women and people that go missing every fucking second.
well, and not only that, but where are those women on the news? Where are those
If they
women
are
on
on the news, if they are on the news, they're criminalized or sexualized. The
Where
shit
is
really.
so where are those women on the news being portrayed as these wonderful, loving people that they actually are?
Right. I'm surprised that they even talked about the domestic violence and all that shit, honestly.
Yeah, it's quite shocking. I would agree with that. I really don't like it that they gave all this coverage for it,
Well,
but it's
you know why they gave coverage for it? Because, you know,
because she's a
I
white
followed.
woman.
Well, no, well, yes, that, but because, and this is why I follow mainstream media and then follow the background of what is actually going on in the world. Something's going down, that the government is doing, whatever, as usual, but there's a lot of atrocities going on as usual that I feel like they just don't want to draw attention to, specifically in America, with white people literally are going crazy and just murdering people and they're getting away with it. Like, not police, but just regular people. And all of these cases are getting swept under the rug. Like, more police shootings are happening. They're getting swept under the rug. No media is picking up whatsoever. Social media is trying to pick it up. Like, people on social media are trying to pick it up, but social media keeps taking shut down and banning shit. If you've noticed on Facebook, left people are getting, quote unquote, left people are getting their shit banned from live. I'm one of those people supposedly getting banned. I can't go live on Facebook. But right-wing people are harassing us and just like wreaking havoc. And now it's spreading over to all the other platforms. And so like when things like this happen, I pay attention to what the mainstream media is doing and what they're putting out and what's actually happening behind the scenes. And this Gabby Petito thing came out, it seems like at the right time. And they just inundated the media with it. To me, it just makes perfect sense.
Wow. Well, I guess that could be a good reason for you to be following mainstream media, is to keep track of stuff like that, for sure.
Yeah, I don't like it, but it's easy to pinpoint stuff now. Like they're like dog whistles and they're code words.
Yeah, that's really terrible, though, that's what they do.
I mean, honestly, this is nothing new. But for people who are not a part of the Matrix and chose not to be and took themselves out of it or got knocked out of it, it's not a surprise, and you know how to like maneuver it, understand it. I just have certain, like, I won't even say that, but I really want for the world, I really think that there's going to be more people that are going to get knocked out of the Matrix when certain big things happen. Like, I feel like the things that are happening right now, we're coming to a cusp of something, because there's a lot of people that, like, since last year, there were a lot of people who were quote unquote woke, right? And now we have everyone's just dead sleep. That's what I'm feeling. There's a lot of people just like dead sleep right now. And I think that personally, I think that's for a purpose. I think that's something. I feel like there's a purpose behind that. Like for me, it's very telling of something changing. And I think that a lot of other people feel that too. So in a sense, like I'm still very much in for me, like fighting mode to just continue to speak truth to power, but I'm also very much like in a calmer sense of it, because I know that I'm just simply doing my part. Like it's all this is in on my shoulders. Does that make sense to y'all?
Kind of. Yeah. Like you're doing your part and everything's kind of like just been, yeah. I could definitely see where that kind of makes sense. But you got to do what's right for you. And sometimes it's important to talk about the things that you're feeling, like the lethargy, that the way that nothing is, it doesn't seem like the same kind of environment that it was like a year ago, when people were like more active, more able to speak out, more able to do things.
Right.
It doesn't feel the same. I would absolutely agree with you on that one. I also don't know exactly what changed.
So let me explain why. So when the pandemic hit, and I like to call it the Matrix, like, you know, you have your worker bees and all. Everyone was working, doing the consumption, American life, consume, and, you know, spend. And so then the pandemic hit and people were forced to like look within and feel themselves and understand what life actually is supposed to be about, what the meaning of life is in a sense. And a lot of people really did wake up, but it doesn't change the fact that the consumption system is very easy to get sucked back into. And as soon as the wheels started turning again and the government and the powers of the world started to reach their arms back in and say, oh, you got to get the fuck back to work. A lot of people just were ready to go right back into it, because money, the power of money is a powerful thing to a lot of people. And that is what pulled people back into the Matrix, if you will. and also the lust and the appeal of all of the means of entertainment that we have in America trump over things like buying a lake house and continuing to live your days out camping versus moving back to the city because the pandemic's over and you're done with that life. Does that make sense? And so like America in general, specifically, I think is just ready to get back to the consumption way of life that they don't give a fuck. And the issues that they cared about collectively are no more. They're just more so doing the vanity type of things that they were into doing before. You know what I'm saying? And that's a bone that I have to pick with American society, and I knew it was going to happen. And it kind of upsets me, but I should have expected it so that I wasn't so upset about it. But for me, I feel like, and I kind of want to segue that into another thing when it comes to the powers that be, America, just being in the matrix and being indoctrinated, going back to celebrities and R. Kelly, and victimization and combining all of that. Hollywood in general, when you get under their scope, it's very, very hard to escape. And this is stuff that a lot of people might have issue with me saying or whatever, but I really don't give a fuck. Because we can talk about it. There's a lot of people that can agree with what I'm saying, not even from like a spiritual or a Christian aspect and or Illuminati aspect, but just look at it from what it fuck is. Like we can talk about, for starters, childhood stars. R. Kelly was not necessarily a childhood star, but he did fall prey to the evils of the system, the Hollywood system. But you do have child stars that fell prey, like Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes, Lady Gaga was young when she actually did start. But my point with Lady Gaga is she was indoctrinated by the system in some sense, but she woke up. She woke up and she rose above it, but she still realized that she has a when you're, and this is not talking about like the soul aspect of things. I'm looking at it, I'm right now specifically speaking from like a monetary aspect and a contract aspect. Like she has duties that she still has to fulfill, but she's been open about this now. She's at a point where she's able to talk about it without succumbing to the repercussions of things, if that makes sense. But that's just one example. Right in the spotlight right now, people are talking about the whole Britney Spears thing and her conservatorship, but not really talking about what that actually means and what is behind it, because there's a whole bigger story behind all of that stuff. Beyonce and Jay-Z, people want to jump to the Illuminati thing, but there's a bigger thing behind it. Beyonce belongs to Jay-Z. You can go to the Fugees and Lauryn Hill and Wyclef Jean. Lauryn Hill, they wanted her to belong to Wyclef Jean. She said no. They wanted her to abort her baby to the Marley son. She said no. And they blacklisted her and did everything they could to diminish her, write her off, like just slander her name. And it's happened to so many countless artists, entertainers in general. And people want to say, you know, this is on the fringe of topics. I really don't care. There's a lot of documentation and evidence behind this shit. So going back, because I want to talk to y'all about this stuff, but circling all the way back from all of what I just said to R. Kelly, Nikki, this is your floor.
What'd you say?
I said, Nikki, this is your floor.
I don't even know what you're asking me. I feel like you say so much, and then I'm just like, yes, what?
So what you got to say about that? Like R. Kelly, Hollywood, indoctrination, victimization, because you know they do sexual things to them. I don't know how familiar like Nickelodeon was kind of like, I was a 90s baby, so Nickelodeon was very much up my alley, but like there was a producer, he was a big guy and like all that and stuff, and he would throw parties at his house and have them get in the pool. Amanda Bynes succumbed to a lot of that stuff with him, and it scarred them for life. And as they're succumbed to like working, that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, well, there's 100% there's that kind of stuff going on, and in Hollywood, and it's like it's really deep. It's if you look into things like MK Ultra, mind control, if you look into like um any of these child stars, and you go back and you pay attention to the way that they handled them, um what's his name? Corey, the two Coreys. All you have to do is watch one interview with him, and you know that he something happened.
the two
Um,
Corys.
yeah, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. And the one Corey, I believe he killed himself, didn't he?
It sounds so familiar.
The two Coreys from all the boy, the kid shit when you were, well, you guys weren't born yet, probably. Um, um, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. I don't know how to get to that because when I tried to change the screen, it threw me out of the
Uh,
thing. So I don't
so
even.
okay, so Mary, because she grew up in the Amish culture, she didn't grow up with the cultural things of the American way that we grew up and had to witness. So what I will say first off is that, Mary, we were succumbed to like an over sexualization at a very early age on TV, especially for me growing up. Nikki, did you see like a slow progression of it growing up?
Yes, it got, by the time you guys were coming, it was out of control. Like I was uncomfortable
That makes sense. I remember
because
my mom.
we didn't grow up like that. We were still coming out. Like you got to think when I grew up, we had black and white TV.
Right.
Like my mom had the color TV downstairs. We had a
Uh,
black and white TV that we the kids watched. We didn't have color TV. Like we weren't watching. We weren't exposed to like we watched like we had like a couple stations. We didn't even have cable.
wow.
You know what I'm
That
saying?
makes,
Like you have
yeah.
ABC, CBS, NBC, 17, 29, and 48, 12, of course. So you're
Wow.
talking about something completely, completely different. Like when I was a kid, like I was watching Lucy and they slept in two different beds.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I think it was somewhere in the 80s where they started.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
grew up during that kind of time. Like that's the kind of stuff I was watching. Like, oh, we had Daisy Duke. So, like that was risque. She had on those little shorts and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But that was about as wild as it got. Sanford and Son, the Jeffersons, like
Right.
our cartoons, Batman and Robin, like I know now people try to like sexualize them and stuff, but it didn't feel like that when I was a kid. I didn't know nothing about is Batman, is Robin gay? Like I don't know that shit. Like I don't even know what gay is. Like
See, I was born in 89. So, like, for me, there was already a good level of sexualization. But as I went into the 2000s, like, I witnessed my mom, because my mom had me when she was young, but, her era was the 80s. And she grew up listening to, like, at a young age, 70s stuff. But as she was in high school, she really liked Janet Jackson. But that was the level of sexual, sex. But at the time, she grew up with her. She grew with her. So as the
mhm,
90s went, Janet had that explosive era. Married Janet Jackson, MJ's sister.
Yes.
I'm sure you know who Janet
Yes.
Jackson is.
I
Fucking
know who Janet Jackson is.
so
Thank you.
right. So so my bad. In the 80s, she really had that pop girl image and stuff. In the 90s, it wasn't as much an indoctrination from my standpoint. I think it was more so her coming into her own, but also breaking free from, like, I think you can relate to this in a sense. Like, she was definitely, they were Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jackson family. And
Yeah.
so, like, she was very much indoctrinated by her dad and her family to be a certain way, and she broke free from that and all the abuse that she went through. And when she released the Janet album, it was very sexualized, and to a lot of people a big shock, over sexualized, but it was because she was a black woman a young Black woman freeing and liberating herself that I think people took such like, oh my God, shock to it. But at the same time, Madonna was doing the very same thing. And some people took to that too. Christians took to that. So I'm not saying there
Madonna
wasn't
was
any flack
out
on
of
Madonna.
control though. We
Right.
didn't like in Black households, Madonna wasn't like okay. Like when you were talking, I was thinking about like because I grew up in the 80s, like I came of age in the 80s.
Right.
But I wasn't allowed to listen to Prince. I was sneaking
What?
listening to Prince.
Oh. Well, yeah, Prince was risque.
Yeah,
Oh
like I
my
wasn't
God.
allowed to, and when I got older, I was like, oh shit, that's what he was talking about. No wonder I
Right.
wasn't allowed to listen. So
Right.
like that stuff was going on, like Juicy Fruit. I remember Juicy Fruit. I was so hyped about Juicy Fruit. Please follow the instructions on the pin
What
pad.
is
But
Juicy Fruit?
you got to look it up. It's a song.
Oh shit.
It's
Oh shit.
out of control.
That,
Yeah, stuff kids don't have no business listening to.
Stuff
ooh.
kids
Stuff
have no
really.
business listening to. Are we
Yep.
kids now?
And
Now we
we
can.
no, I'm talking
But
about when
see,
I was a kid.
back then we were all exposed to that and it went above our heads,
Yeah,
but it was still some stuff subliminally that we're
yeah.
programmed to and we picked up on. That's what we're pointing out. Like, for me, I watched and I didn't really understand it at the time. But I felt it, like I felt the energy from my mom change as the music progressed on for us local station. The hip hop and R&B station was Power 99 that my mom grew up
Yeah.
listening to. And then WDAS was like the older smooth jazz type of station. And
Yeah.
so, like, my grandparents listened to that one, but my mom, I witnessed her, like, the Janet era when she came out and was, liberated and free. Because I'm not going to say she was over sexualized. She came into her own as a woman and was freeing herself. So I don't take that into consideration as far as like the other ones that were forced into it. It's a little different, and I'll get to that later. But like once things changed and like let's say 2000 came and Janet released like All For You and stuff like that, my mom had got to a point where the music was that like she started listening to Christian stuff more so and like older stuff, and she's like, I can't fuck with this, like they're taking it too far. And I was like, what? Because that's when I was coming of age and starting like, oh my God, this music is amazing. But here I go into 2010 2012 and I'm like, what is going on to music? This is horrible. So it's not just a generational thing, though. The way that we're exposed to music in American society is like a hyper. The younger you are, the harder they over sexualize things, and they try to elongate it as long as they can into your adulthood. If that
Well,
makes sense.
that's because they're trying to usher in an agenda. Like
Yes.
it's that's what it all is about. That's why I don't get involved in like this is why it's really hard to fight for anything because everything turns into these agendas. And it's
Right.
like, no, I'm not talking about an agenda. I'm talking about human rights. I'm talking about it shouldn't matter who you have sex with or what color you are or any of that stuff. You should all
Right.
have human rights, period.
Right.
Period. That's it. You shouldn't be killed in the streets. You shouldn't be like none of this stuff. But everybody has to turn it into these agendas. And again, this is like Mary was saying, this is the kind of stuff that separates us.
Yes.
Like we all have these agendas, but it's all a plan that's bigger than any of us.
Yeah.
And they're doing it right in front of us. Like,
Facts.
Did
yeah.
you just want
So,
to say wake
but
up?
I'm a conspiracy theorist. So,
That's what they like to say. But at the same time, they don't say that about these QAnon people and all the stuff that really actually don't have any substantiated claims on anything. But if you sit there and listen to the stuff that like we're sitting here talking about, there's a lot of things behind it that are you can look it up. You know what I mean? Like it's substantiated shit. It's the kind of shit that they don't want to talk about on the media, but it's out there to research. But like I was watching this documentary, like as I always do, about Nigerian mafias in Europe that are trafficking their women into Europe and like making millions and billions of fucking dollars actually. Which And one end surprised me because like the authorities had no fucking clue. Um, I forget where I was going with that.
The authorities had they had no clue about this trafficking, because the thing is if they're trafficking women and that's an international crime, but again, where's the I just is there actual like media coverage of this anywhere?
There's like reports and papers of like, so there's like two big gangs and they do a lot of killing with these women. Um, but my thing is, did they purposely turn a blind eye to let these atrocities continue, or did they underestimate them, or were they afraid that they would be seen as racist if they were to do it? Um, that's my thought because black, white, I don't care. Like the stuff that were happening to these women was fucking nuts. Um, just fucking nuts. And like I said, this is kind of unrelated from the topic that I wanted to talk about, but I just had to bring that up because I did talk about it somewhere. Um, but
Well,
no, going back. Go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Going back to Hollywood and so like growing up for me, it was definitely I definitely saw a progression for like I grew up initially watching like Ren and Stimpy and Doug and things like that. And as I progressively got older, like my little brother's like 10 years younger than me, and the stuff that he grew up watching just didn't make any kind of sense at all. It just it disturbed me. And I'm like, what are they trying to do to these kids? Um so like I started to understand what my uh mom and like older adults were talking about. And then you do your research on stuff and it's like America's fucking sick.
Sadly, there's a lot of things in American culture that really need to change to make sure that people have human rights. Just it is a can we like go back to something else that I had asked
Sure.
you about? Did we already talk about like Marilyn Manson?
Oh yeah, you wanted to bring up yes. Go ahead, let me know.
Have you heard anything about him at all?
Um Not really. I remember like I used to watch MTV back in the day. Remember him being on there, but I turned when he would come on because he just creeped me out. But I don't really know much about him.
Well, right now he is facing, as of 1 July, he is facing his fourth sexual assault case.
Wow.
Just so you know. Um, I think it's also interesting. It's going to be very interesting to watch and see what happens to him and how that gets handled versus like what happens to R. Kelly and what happens to Chris Brown and all of that. Like, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch, and it's going to be important to watch it too, because that's going to it's going to show you like exactly what we're talking about here, the bias that happens.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that's the sole reason of why it's important to watch it solely because we need to point out the bias. We need to be calling out the white people that are committing these atrocities just as much as the black ones. I don't mind the black ones being talked about, but don't oversaturate the media with that when you're not going to talk about the missing black and indigenous women that go missing every fucking day. That's my big thing. Like I don't mind them being reprimanded, but if you're going to victimize Dylan Roof and all these other motherfuckers that kill black people and get McDonald's and Burger King, you want to victimize them, then victimize R. Kelly too. That's like my stipulation. Not to say that they should not pay for the things that they've done, but also you're gonna give all these excuses to other people. Give them grace as well. And I want to point back to the evils of Hollywood and the things that are heightened when you go through. There's a lot of things that they don't really talk about that people endure, like being celebrities
Right.
and being
Right. And I can just say let's also talk about Josh Duggar. We're
who's that
talking
sounds
about
familiar.
Hollywood, right? Let's talk about Josh Duggar from TLC's 19 Kids and Counting. He was arrested and pled not guilty to receiving and possessing child pornography. He was caught when he was a teenager. The church handled it, and here we are back, and they apparently did the same thing, like nothing meaningful to reform him, and so now he's back in court with another case continuing the cycle.
Really?
You didn't know Josh Duggar was arrested?
You're informing me because this is look, let me know, hon, because this is
No, he was arrested in April. He was 14, 15 years old, and he molested people, and they literally allowed his church to handle his reform. Clearly it worked well. My bad.
right. I mean, well, that goes to show you just the same thing that happens with the indigenous kids. Like,
Yep.
what the hell? What the hell?
Yep. So in 2006, there was a police report. There was a 2006 police report that surfaced in mid-2015 detailing that he, at 33, molested 5 underage girls. By the way, TLC pulled the show. By the way.
Good.
Which is good. I mean, it's a start, right?
Right.
It's a start. But there's so much
a lot
more.
of these things are financial, and they want the attention off of them, and blah 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 blah.
Right. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are in positions where if they handled these cases across the board the same, rather than like allowing bribes, and I guess I shouldn't say bribes per se, but rather than looking at money per se, if they started looking at people as humans, no matter how much or how little money they had,
Right.
and started actually seeing people, then when these cases happen, they would be handled in such a different way. They really would be.
I think where it starts. I'm sorry, I'm eating some chicken I cooked, chicken and rice edamame, some stuffing I made. Yes, good. Anyway, I'll send y'all a picture. So
you eat some chicken and rice and you're not sharing?
Fam, let me send it virtually. I got you. Like, where was I going with this? I think it starts with changing our culture. Our culture is so inundated with hypersexuality, hyperduality without explanation of what it actually entails and what it really means. And so we're hyper separated from ourselves, not even just physically and mentally, but spiritually. Do you know what I mean? And that is the big picture that so many of people that are indoctrinated through the media and programming, as we say, are missing. And they got a piece of that through 2020, but the power of consumption just pushed them right back out of that and right back into the matrix.
Mm-hmm. It's really sad. It really is. And I just really, I mean, people need to feel connected to each other as they go through life.
Yes.
I think that's like really important for them to feel connected to each other, because when you feel disconnected from people, and it can be like, it can really be a hard journey for people to walk.
And you know what, while you're saying that, it can be a hard journey to walk when you're not fed the truth, when you're fed programming that disassociates you. You were in a society that already did that, and then you left that society to go into another society that was doing it on a grander scale. So A, I commend you, but B, I just want to give you a lesson of advice to just keep yourself aware and vigilant that like you're still in a mirror world of like what you already experienced. So like keep fighting, fam. Like seriously, because you are a powerful being, and the sooner that you realize that, like I'm not forcing on you anything that we've spoken about tonight from our perspectives, but I really know that I know, like I've been on your show. I know the kind of stuff that you talk about, and I know where you're coming from. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and like where, and you asked like, you know, the things that we experienced growing up in American society, and I'm here to tell you like the things that you experienced, American society is on a grander scale. And so like for a person like me that doesn't have kids but that wants kids, I'm really thinking carefully about like how I'm going to accomplish that in the way that I want, because I want to make sure that my offspring soak up and understand the ways of the world that the way that I do as best as possible, but better. You know what I mean? They have to see further than what I see and experience.
Right.
And I have to, the way that I live my life and maneuver things is kind of reminding myself of that, and as sort of like a motivation and a goal and a guide for my light as far as like what I'm supposed to accomplish in the immediate like 5-year plan, so to speak. Um, and going back to like childhood indoctrination and all of that, because I really want to keep touching on that. Um, and share my experiences on that. Like I know that there's a lot of demons that I have inside when it comes to molestation and rape in my adulthood, that play a big part on the things that I soaked up, not only from my family and the energy and the environment that I was in, but also the stuff that I watched on TV progressively. You know what I mean? The music that one listens to and how it progressively changed throughout the 90s, especially Black music. And R. Kelly, from the jump, yes, I'm going back to R. Kelly, from the jump, was pushed into talking about always sexually pleasuring women. And not that there's anything wrong with it, and not that he didn't have other songs that were great, because he did, but a lot of the singles were pushed out in that manner. And again, he wrote, produced, arranged everything. So I'm not saying that it wasn't partly him and that he didn't play a role in that, but look at the bigger picture of the society that Black people were progressively pushed into. And so Mary, it's on one hand, like that also feeds the perception that a lot of white people are having of Black people, that I understand, I get it, but you gotta understand and experience it from a Black person's view to like understand it too, and why we could be so defensive of it. And a lot of people don't understand our defensiveness of it, but like it's also a force of self-hate and mutilation that is forced upon us. That's the best way that I can explain it.
Yeah.
Nikki, where you at?
I don't know.
I'm right here. I think that's a good point, because we've always been taught to love our captivity and our captor.
Right.
You know, we're struggling. These boys, a lot of these people, boys, girls, whoever, that go out and try to make music, even if that's not where their music comes from in their heart, that's where they're going to be directed to make music.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really not going to have a choice if they want the lifestyle, if they want the riches, if they want, you know, these record executives. And again, this, nothing I'm saying about any of this stuff is not anything you can't research. You can just put it in YouTube.
Yep.
But these record executives, I mean, Michael Jackson talked about Tommy Mottola.
Talk about it.
You know, like,
yes,
they've been doing this stuff.
By the way, Mary Tommy Mottola was married to Mariah Carey, but more importantly, he was her handler. And a lot of the music that she talked about and wrote in the late 90s were directly talking about the atrocities that she faced and how she had to struggle to break through that. And a lot of people don't understand that. Like, they just write off Mariah Carey, but she really spoke some deep shit. Lauryn Hill too. Like, there's so many, especially female artists, that did break free from that, but had a really hard fucking time. Nick, I do want to go back to Tommy Mottola.
Mm-hmm. Hello?
Yeah, what you know about him?
I don't know much about him. I just know that Michael Jackson did a speech and talked about how wretched he was.
Okay.
I don't.
Tommy,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So Tommy Mottola is a bigwig that did a lot of really horrendous things. So what I really want to get the point out is, in Hollywood, there's a lot of, conspiracy theorists, as they say, that will talk about, like, even if it's religious standpoint or spiritual standpoint. But even if you want to look at it from a blatant what it is standpoint, these people prey upon these young artists, and they literally suck the soul out of them, all the creativity. They just suck the life force out of them.
Talk about
it. And inject them with what they want, which is to basically indoctrinate us and feed that negative energy into us. That's the best way that I could paint a picture for you. But specifically with Mariah Carey, when she started, she was a baby. She was 17.
Yeah.
And she had a powerful voice, and she came from a really horrible background, like abuse, molestation, trauma, and her music was her escape from that. So she had a lot of fucking power, okay? A lot of energy, if you will. Tommy Mottola saw that, and he's what I like to call energy sucker. He sucks the energy out of people, and there's a lot of music execs, and Hollywood is the way it is because it attracts a lot of people that do bad things, and they do things that really take the soul out of people. And there's actually some documentaries I want to show you about the evils of Hollywood, Mary, that just, if you ever go to Hollywood and you see all the homeless and poor people that really had a light in them, it's like a zombie land.
I've been there.
I don't ever want to go there, honestly.
It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
And you wonder why. They, like the City of Angels, that has a double meaning to it. It has a deeper meaning to it, if you will. But going back to Mariah Carey real quick, like, he indoctrinated her from a young age, worked the hell out of her to become what he wanted her to be. But as she started getting older and was around very freeing artists that at the time, mid-90s, Black artists and Black entertainers and Black artists were thriving and really coming into we had creative abilities and freedom at that really small point in time. And there was a purpose behind that. They were working us. They were using the hell out of us to experiment on us to get the things that they wanted come to 2000s. And they did. And they threw us they just let us go after that. And I'll get to that in another podcast probably. But with this specifically, Mariah Carey was exposed to the likes of like Missy, The Brat, Jermaine Dupri, who were doing really good things for themselves, and it rubbed off on her. And she got the empowerment to like challenge Tommy Mottola and kind of break free, so to speak. And she did, but it backfired on her, and her career took a hit for it. But she persevered, but her career never fully recovered from that. And there's a lot of other artists that went through similar things, and you can look at it's like a literally verbatim trajectory time and time again. But Mariah Carey is one of those great examples of escaping from their handler. Lauryn Hill was another. Beyonce is a perfect example of one that is gripped like tightly under their handler and perpetuates a certain type of message that is troublesome at times. Like, I miss the Beyonce of, even though it was hypersexualized and she was ultra young back in the 90s, mind you. And this is what I was exposed to, Mary, at a very young age. I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, grooving to Destiny's Child, not knowing that this girl was 14 years old and looking like she was like 25, 26 out at the club, talking about how she's cheating on man, or that she's the other woman to another man's girl. Like, it was crazy stuff. But this is the stuff I was exposed to in the 90s. that had a deep effect on me and how I viewed relationships and how I was supposed to be valued as not a woman or a man, but an individual in general. How I was supposed to be valued femininely and masculinely. Do you understand that? Like I identify as a male, but there are feminine sides to me, and I acknowledge all of that as a being, and that had effects on me. I was raped when I was 24. I was exposed to molestation when I was younger, but like the ways of the LGBT community, the ways of the Black community, the ways of the American society, whether you're gay, straight, lesbian, doesn't matter. You're fed some kind of programming that perpetuates programming, some type that has an effect on your life. Um, and a lot of people do not want to admit that, but the proof is in the pudding, and it's right in front of your face. Go ahead, whoever wanted to talk.
I'm not whoever.
Yeah, whoever wants to talk. I don't.
You just the lies that you're fed. So, like on one hand, I didn't grow up watching TV that way, where like watching people being over sexualized like that. But on the other hand, everything I did was sexualized. For example, like if in some communities when you show your elbows, that's considered like if your elbows like might be too close together, like you might be having some Amish porn there because it could potentially look like
Wow.
nipples. So I'm just letting you know, like, no, I didn't experience that, but I can relate to that and I can understand why you say like it affects how you see the world. Because
Yeah.
it really does. Because I still dress like I dress how I choose to nowadays most of the time, but there's still times where I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and I have to be like fully covered like 100% from head to toe because of that.
Now, see, the things that I went through, I don't care. Like, I mean, first of all, there's stuff out there of me. So like someone, if they really wanted to do their research, they could see me naked anytime. Um, and so I've grown to be comfortable with my body and feel liberated, but there was at a point where I was like over sexualizing my body to get attention because I thought that was the way to get some kind of affection. And over time of not getting like actual affection, but getting that physical affection and just not really being valued and getting my cup filled, I realized that like I had to do a lot of soul searching and changing and valuing myself and stuff. But a lot of people don't understand that and they succumb to a lot of the evils of American society. And I'm not saying I'm not saying it's sad, but it's what I acknowledge. It's what I acknowledge of American society, and it's one of the things that I really am trying hard to change just by um, being my authentic self, and doing my best to not feel restrained in this society, which sometimes means like being ridiculed or being talked shit on just because I come off different. And if that's the case, like so be it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, I totally get that because sometimes you really have to. Because I'm not gonna lie, I did a lot of stuff. I did a lot of stuff. I've visited like 10 different countries. I've done a lot of partying. This often happens is like people do things when they're held on such a short leash. They end up doing things that sometimes they wouldn't have done had they not been so affected by the short leash. And for me, that involved a lot of alcohol. If I could just get back all of the alcohol that I consumed in my 20s, I mean, the money I spent for the alcohol, if I could just get that back, like we'd have I'd have a pretty nice savings account. Let's just put that out there. And sometimes when you involve yourself in like alcohol and not only that, the hypersexuality, which is also something that sometimes we go through, when you involve yourself in that, sometimes there's awakening moments where you have to really soul search and figure out who you are and what you want to be and what you want to portray yourself as.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, the point I'm making is American society is so, the evils of it and the programming of it can be so strong for us normal, ordinary citizens. Think about how it must be for celebrities,
Right.
Hollywood, especially ones that started from a child, you know? And no, it's no wonder that they have all these addictions. You had, issues with things like, imagine what they go through, and it's no wonder that some of them succeed and come out on the other end. Some of them commit suicide. How many of them have committed
Right.
suicide?
And
And
just as
and the
an
media just wants to
example,
chuck. Right. Go ahead.
I was indoctrinated into a culture, and this is something that I feel is like absolutely indoctrination. But just as an example of how strong the indoctrination can be, I ran away 17 years ago. I still to this day sometimes have the thing where if a man is speaking or a man enters a room, I am conditioned to get permission from that man to open my mouth. To this day. Doesn't happen very often nowadays, but when I first left, it was really bad. So, if it can be that strong for people who left that culture and they're no longer back there and they're no longer interacting with people, like what is it doing to the people in Hollywood who are
Well,
constantly there 24/7 and there
now
is
let's
no escape for them?
now let's get into it. Nikki, you still there?
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about MK Ultra. I think this is the perfect segue. For those who don't know what MK Ultra is.
It's a mind control program. They used it I think the CIA used it like in the 60s.
Yep.
Um, and they still use it. They've never stopped. I
Mhm.
want to say that they might have renamed it, rebranded it or something. I might have heard that. But there's a lot of evidence that they use it with celebrities, and I'm going to give you a couple examples. Britney Spears is one of them.
Talk
And
about it.
what they do is when the celebrity breaks free, so Britney broke free years and years ago, and
Talk
they
about
tried
it.
to pretend that she was crazy. They presented her to us as crazy. They made
Talk
us
about it.
think she wasn't able to take care of herself and she was crazy. And that's where Britney's problems began because she broke free
Mhm.
of the programming. I
Yep.
often tell people I'm not a Kanye fan, but I'm going to tell you, Kanye has the strongest mind I feel that they've ever tried to break
I agree.
because they keep getting him and they'll get him and you can see he looks all, docile and, he's saying all the right things. And then he breaks free and he's standing at an award show and he just starts spitting off some shit that they don't want him to say.
Right.
And then
Right.
they say, well, Kanye's crazy. He's crazy. He does these things. And
Right.
and so then the public looks at it as Kanye's crazy. And so
Yep.
whatever Kanye says doesn't matter,
Yep.
even though Kanye's talking about something. There are several celebrities that have said, there's the one, I cannot think of the young black celebrity. I don't think he's young to you guys, but who he has a YouTube video out, and I want to say that he was a victim of the MK Ultra.
B.O.B.
Yes, B.O.B.
Yes.
airplanes.
Yep.
Yes, and he talks about it, and it's basically has to do with the programming, the what they want us to believe, how they want us to act. And so they have like these Kanyes and these Britneys, and they have them saying and behaving in a way that
Mhm.
that they want us to follow and they want us to listen to. And they want to hold them under control because you can't let a mind like Kanye loose. They
Right.
say that some of these people gave up somebody as a sacrifice for their chance at fame, not their chance, but to be famous, to have money. They say that Kanye gave up his mother.
Yep.
And if you watch the decline of Kanye, that could be true. Like you match that with his success and like that kind of stuff. His handler, the Kardashian chick.
Yep.
You know, she was the one that made sure he was getting to the psychiatrist and he was taking those pills and stuff like that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, from the beginning when Jay-Z and Beyonce got together, I understood that Jay-Z was creating Beyonce.
Yes.
He created who we see as Beyonce today. That's
now
Jay-Z's creation.
a tidbit, because I'm gonna send you videos on this, Nick. I'm pretty sure you probably already seen it, but like a little tidbit going to Aaliyah. Aaliyah was supposed to be Beyonce. Dame Dash and Jay-Z were supposed to, they basically fought for her. Jay-Z didn't get her. Dame Dash ended up getting her. She died. That's a whole nother story. And Jay-Z was able to get Beyonce and put to the forefront. Dame Dash got out of it. But it would have been the same story for Dame Dash and Aaliyah.
Right. Right. And so this is what they do. Like it's just all diabolical. And it all has to do with, I think, greed and money and trying to own the world and all that kind of stuff. And they can do whatever they want if we're mesmerized.
Yep.
If we're mesmerized by Hollywood and by, you know, the glitz and the glam and who's marrying who and who got surgery and, you know, Real Housewives of this and, you know, Real Housewives, like if they have us so immersed in that, we don't really see what's happening to our society as a whole.
And ourselves.
They're raping and pillaging everything.
Yes.
Every resource on this earth.
Yes.
Including human resource.
Hashtag stop line 3.
So that's what I think.
Okay. So about Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X speaks in metaphors, but he also talks about the Black experience and his experience. And he likes to throw things in the face of the people that made him to feel not human. I love Lil Nas X. I dig the way that he puts his perspective on things and gives another voice to people that really don't have a voice in a certain genre. But as far as like him being indoctrinated or anything like that, what I've noticed with independent artists when they get into the game, they stand a better chance of not getting indoctrinated, so to speak. And when the industry tries to, I've seen a significant amount of them break free and go back to being independent and still do great. One of my favorite singers, Tinashe, is one of those people, but like there's a bunch. So I don't know, but like I've seen certain images and things of Lil Nas X that makes me think that like he could be under a little bit of a grip. But then he says things that make me think otherwise. So Nick, are you familiar with Lil Nas X?
I'm absolutely familiar with him, and he's absolutely part of the whole thing. So Hollywood can't leave the gay people out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so he's flamboyant, he's all of that great stuff, and he's like saying this stuff that's like so controversial, as he would, right? As the gay star would, like. And so I feel like he's a narrative that they're feeding us also.
So he's being the over-sexualized star for the gay community, the gay Black, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel you. And it gives us another reason to divide us up, specifically among the Black community, because it's a hot debate lately that has been dividing us even more than ever, that has been bubbling under the surface for years anyway, but it does bring it to a head now, you know?
But then also I feel like he's misunderstood.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like the statements that he's making, people don't even understand the depth of the statement that he's making.
Agreed.
Like I've never watched a single video he did, but I've read people describe the video.
You should, because it's very beautiful the way he depicts things, and it explains a lot. It really does.
The description of the videos gave me an understanding of what he was talking about. For me, it was like, okay, so I get what the message is that he's trying to get across. So I think that the struggle with him is probably that he's still saying messages. Like,
yeah.
So like Barack Obama, for example,
Talk about it.
When he was a senator, the young senator from Illinois, I heard him speak. And I ran around Pennsylvania every time he was in the area. I went to see him because he believed in what he was talking about. And that's what he wanted to do. But once you become president, just the fact that they're looking at you to be president means that you're part of something bigger than you probably even understand in that moment.
Yep.
And then once you become president, they don't let you have those dreams anymore. They let you know that you're in here to do a job. This is the job you're going to do, period, point blank. So it's
somebody commented, said Lil Nas X is 100% caught up in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so people still have that, like I watched the Obama deception, and that's what let me know that Obama was part of it. But he meant what he said at first, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have been able to convince so many people. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed. Yep.
He convinced us because he believed in it, and he had us on his side. So once we're on his side, it's harder for us to leave him, or to, we're going to make excuses for him and stuff like that. Because that's how the Black community is. We always want to stand by each other.
And and R. Kelly is a microcosm of what you're explaining right now.
Yes, of course. And of course, we don't want it like O.J. Simpson. Go back to O.J. Simpson.
Talk about it. Yes.
Black people tell you that O.J. didn't do that. O.J. didn't get convicted. That's what we celebrated.
Right.
Because it's really there for us. We've been convicted and damaged so much that we don't care if you did it. If you get off, we're going to celebrate that because you beat this system that beats us every single day.
That's what we're celebrating. Yes.
So it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, you guys say R. Kelly did it. So what? I'm going out and buy an R. Kelly CD.
That was like Sha'Carri Richardson, the track star.
Yeah.
People started writing her up because of the homophobic stuff she said, but I understand the context behind why she said it. And you know what? The fact that she still achieved like what she achieved, then it's not that I don't understand. I support her because of what she accomplished as a person. Do you know what I mean? And I support her because of that. I don't condone the stuff she said, but I also understand when and how it was said. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like the same thing.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, I get it. I understand. Like, I get it. You want the underdog to win sometimes. Like, it just doesn't matter. And I think that's really what it comes down to when you're talking about cheering for these people. It's really like, I'm going to stand behind them because they're Black. That no other reason.
Right.
Because the shit you guys do to us, you don't do it for any other reason than that we're Black.
Talk about it.
And so that's what I really think this stuff, boils down to. And as long as they keep us docile and twerking and, doing all that shit, talking about
like shit because of the food
and Power Book 3 and, Canaan and all that shit. As long as we're doing that, we're not unifying and bucking up against the bullshit that's going on.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We're preoccupied, and more bullshit can go on. We've been under attack since the white man came to this country.
That's right.
We were under attack before he came, but here in this country, ever since he landed, he's been trying to kill anything that doesn't look like him.
Mm-hmm. Down the whole planet is.
And please, again, people that are listening, I'm not racist. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about this European centric
Colonizers. That's what I call them.
Well,
Colonizers.
we live in a European centric culture.
Yep.
Period. It's just the truth of it.
Yep.
There's no room for anything outside of the European way.
Right.
Period. That's why little black girls can't wear their natural hair to school in Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why. You know, it's why black people can get shot and killed in their house when they're not doing anything. They can get shot and killed in the street, and they'll be victimized. They'll be demonized, and they'll say, well, you know, he might have had crack, or they probably wrote a bad check, or they did something. If they'd have just sat still and listened.
Well, now you could just get shot out on the street and get laughed at, called nigger, and it's okay. Get sent into the news and no one bats an eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, of course, they let Bill Cosby out of jail. People are going be ready to throw parties.
Right. And like, I fully understand it, and I get so upset when people just want to jump down people's throats without really understanding the full context behind it. And that's part of why I wanted to do this podcast tonight, because being a victim myself, I want nothing more than the victims to be heard and understood and get some sort of healing through this, because they need to progress with their lives. But with that being said, the examples that are being made, it's unequal and it's not fair. And the complexity of this when you involve race is what I really take issue with, and I felt like really needed to be highlighted here, and understood, because it's a big problem. It's a big problem that is a bigger picture of American society and Hollywood, and its big, massive, fucking fat ass grip that it has on all of us, literally all of us.
I do want to share something. So, like,
Yeah.
as you're speaking, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, and I'm like thinking about the conversation, and as it progressed, and I go back to the word luxury.
Yeah.
And I have an understanding, and my understanding is that to me, being Black in America, we're never allowed to just talk about how bad that experience is or how much that experience affects us.
Right.
Because every time we talk about it, someone else speaks up,
right,
with a story that they compare to being Black in America.
So true.
And to me, there is no story that compares.
Right.
There are other horrible things that have been done and that are being done. But this needs to be talked about. And I always feel shut down when you try to talk about it. And you always, Black people we always want to take care of other people, and we're not trying to offend them. And but when can our voice be heard?
Right.
And it does feel like a luxury, you know, certain other things. And I'm not talking about her life, Mary's life, or anybody in particular. I'm saying different things do feel like a luxury. Like, damn, maybe if I wasn't Black and I was over here doing this, at least I wouldn't have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, we can't even talk about it. We can't even like sit and say, like, what is the Black experience?
In any possible way and fashion, our voices are quelled and shushed infinitely. I felt every word of that.
And I also need to correct, I was with Democracy Spring, not Democracy Now.
Oh shit. Yeah, completely different.
Yep.
So I will post a link in a second to Democracy Now. because I just want you to take a look, and for the viewers, take a look if they're not familiar with Democracy Now, because they do great work, and they give you information on like the world over of what's going on around town. Um, crappy crap. So you definitely want to check out democracynow.org. They do have videos on YouTube, like daily almost, and that's how I found out about stuff that's actually going down, and it'll be uh just the same as what's going on like on social media that ordinary people are talking about. So, and they also have very, very credible sources that do a lot of fucking dangerous ass work. So I really commend them. But when they get back to Hollywood again, I just put the link to Democracy Now in the comments for those that want to check it out. Great news source again. And we are gonna wrap this up in a little bit. Again, Mary is she runs the Misfit Amish LLC, which if you've been listening to the podcast thus far, they grew up in the Amish community and broke free from it, and they talk about their experiences and help others through similar experiences that they have as well. And you can check the website out right here. There's links in the comments, and I will post links to the Facebook page as well. And then we also have Nick from Nick's Village, who has a website you can also visit, and a physical store in Coatesville, PA. And you do a lot of pop-ups as well, if I'm not mistaken, that I've seen.
Yes, I
Both
do
of
a lot
y'all.
of pop-ups, and I actually run the store. So it's the Creation Cottage Collective and Metaphysical Shop.
Ah,
And so the collective is a group of women. I'm one of them. And if you ever look at our posts, I'll post like Meet the Collective, and I'll put all of the women that are part of it. But Tabitha Wallace owns Creation Cottage and the Metaphysical Shop. I just do a lot of the work there for her. Um, but yeah, that's what I do. But I'm there all the time. And I also have space there where I do my healing.
yes. And also talk about the sound journeys, because I experienced that and it was amazing. There is a video for y'all if y'all want to check it out. I'll post a link to that as well. But let us know more about the sound journey.
Well, so I have a friend, Stacy, who has crystal bowls and all kinds of bowls. And I don't know what people know about vibration, but everything is vibration. And so these sounds that come out of these bowls are, I would say, really good higher vibrations. Like she has some that are chakra bowls, so they're attuned to your individual, like whichever chakra it is, so they can help heal. Sound has a wonderful healing quality. I've
Yes.
also, like at Creation Cottage, we actually have a gong, and sometimes we do gong baths. But what we did was we went out to a labyrinth. I have a friend who has a labyrinth at their home, a natural preserve, and we did a sacred ceremony, and we laid out and allowed the vibration of the bowls to cover us and give us some healing. And I do those. Haven't done that many. Stacy does them often, and we plan on doing some more. But that's one of the many um, activities that I do is Sound Journey with Stacy.
And you also read tarot.
Yeah,
You
I'm
healer.
a healer. I use my hands to heal. I'm an energy healer. I also sing and drum and all that great stuff. It's very individual depending on what you you need and what you're asking for. I've been reading tarot cards for 25 years. I I facilitated my first retreat last year for a group of women. I teach classes. I'm being certified as a meditation instructor. Right now, I'm in class for that. Uh, a bunch of stuff like that. I'm constantly working on myself so that I can help other people even more.
Right. As we all should. I could say the same for myself. And easier said than done, but I mean, acknowledgement is the first part of it. So I think I'm doing pretty good, if I could say so myself. As people who do, and not even just the spiritual work that you do, but even activism and speaking truth to power like Mary does, it's important that, especially important for people like us, to have that balance and have that self-care and take care of ourselves, especially, but also to just feel very in tune and in touch and have a clear mind and spirit when we're going into um, battlegrounds, if you will, because no matter what it is that you're involved in, you're going into a battleground every day, if you will. Y'all still there? Mary, where you been at? Are you back?
I'm still here.
Okay. What y'all up to? Did y'all eat?
I I'm eating crackers right now
I know that's right.
because
Yeah,
I'm
I.
fasting starting tomorrow.
Oh. For how long?
I'm gonna do 2 weeks fruit, water, and tea, but I'm doing water and tea all day, but from 4 to 8 a.m. and 4 to 8 p.m. I'll allow myself to have fruit.
I need to try something like that. I've been wanting to for a couple years to do a nice cleanse. Um, but I haven't yet. The closest thing I did was a raw diet, April to May of last year.
Okay.
And after the second week, it was great. Like I felt
Mhm.
amazing. But like the first week, oh my goodness, it was hard. But
Mhm.
it really had some great benefits.
Yeah, and I just started 2 new meditations this weekend, so
That
I'll be doing them.
I dig y'all so much for this talk. Um, so we touched on molestation, our stories, um, R. Kelly and the whole layers that come to that, along with Chris Brown, Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby, Marilyn Manson, Charlie Sheen, the breakdown of how that plays a part in Hollywood, victimization of demographics, especially Black people and Black women, um, the lack of it, and the over victimization of white women, I should say. Sorry. Talked about Black culture. We talked about American culture and the over sexualization and the progressive over sexualization, indoctrination of society, and by the puppets that are used to uh, be the vessels to put that energy out, how they're affected by that and how it manifests in situations like what we're speaking of with R. Kelly, Chris Brown, Michael Jackson, Cosby, and the rest of them. We talked about Hollywood in general, and how women are handled by men to make sure that they stay indoctrinated to be the puppets that they need them to be, i.e., Britney Spears, Mariah Carey, Lauryn Hill, Beyonce, and yeah. Anything else that y'all want to touch on before we gotta get out of here? Any plugs y'all want to list in about what y'all do that we haven't touched on? Now's the time to shoot them out.
I don't have anything extra to say. I just want to say thank you to both of you guys. Um, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. For real. I really appreciate this conversation. Um, I think Mary like dipped out for a second to she said she'd be right back, but that was like 15 minutes ago. She said she was gonna get some food. So I don't know where she went, but a little more about Mary. Again, she runs the Misfit Amish. She has a podcast of her own that you'll want to check out. She has a Patreon. Nick, you also have podcasts as well that you can check out. Actually, let me throw that in the comments. So I don't think I put your. Oh yeah, let me put that link.
Everything I do is on my website.
Awesome sauce.
Like, if somebody is interested in me, go to my website. I have a blog there. I have links to everything I do.
Awesome sauce.
I have an amazing website, girl.
Yes. I like kind of browse through it, but I haven't had a chance to like check it out. And same for Mary. Like I have to go check y'all stuff out when I go to post all the links to everything on the Facebook. I really want people to see this. I think this was a very productive discussion. And not even just for like educate one another, but giving all perspectives to the masses. And this is out there for people to soak up. However they want to take it is up to them. However they want to receive it is up to them. But we spoke our feelings and our truths tonight. And I really want to thank the both of y'all for lending me y'all ears and y'all voices for 2.5 hours. I really hope that y'all were able to touch on everything that y'all wanted to touch on. Yeah, because that was the important thing. This was something I really felt like people really need to hear from a perspective of how we're fed things and how we react to them. Even in our own lives, our own personal lives, because everyone's looking to R. Kelly, and the way that they react to R. Kelly is a direct reflection of the way that they might feel about things themselves, you know?
Right.
Mary, I saw that you back. You got any plugs you want to list before we hop off this junk?
No. I got nothing to add further to this conversation, I don't think. I think it was really good to have this conversation, though. We need to have conversations about the differences and how all of it is connected, because all of it is connected in some form, shape, or way. And until like everybody is united in making the world a better place, it's not going to change things.
Absolutely.
For real. As I say in the podcast, and as you see on the bottom of the screen, please speak truth to power. Give us a message, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Leon Block channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can also find Mary No Justice at Misfit Amish, and you can find Nikki Hill at nicksvillage.com. Please, y'all, give us a shout out, love us, support us, and please make sure you come together. Please make sure you question everything. Please make sure you take a look at yourself and understand why you do the things you do in the environment that we live in, and how it plays a bigger part in the things that you may see on the mainstream media. Make sure that you support independent media first. Y'all have a good night, and thanks for joining us. Leon.